This lecture, I do not call it lecture 3 because I do not introduce a new school of thought to you, international relations. I just introduce you a new sub-school of international relations. In lecture 1, I taught you classical liberalism. In lecture 2, I taught you neoliberalism as well as classical realism. Then as there's neoliberalism, then there should be neoliberalism. Bear in mind that neoliberalism, unlike the relations between realism and neoliberalism, neoliberalism is a modification of realism. Neoliberalism, in fact, the difference between neoliberalism and classical liberalism are quite significant. Neoliberalism does not have so many so-called wishful thinking, like blindly trust democracy, like blindly trust international organization, blindly trust them they have the ability to prevent the outbreak of war. No. Neoliberalism, I would say, is a modification of neoliberalism rather than a modification of classical liberalism. One of the main reasons is because, I will talk about this later, but bear in mind, neoliberalism, in fact, its relation with neoliberalism are two theories based on one basic assumption, the same basic assumption. But these two theories deal with different problems. Neoliberalism deal with security problems, deal with national defense, deal with war. Neoliberalism deal with some non-security problem, deal with economic trade as well as say cooperation, something like this. Okay, a little bit of the history of neoliberalism. This, you can say, more modified and more pragmatic form of liberalism, but I would say not particularly true, because neoliberalism, the difference between classical liberalism and neoliberalism are quite significant, very significant. Neoliberalism, in fact, do not have so many so-called liberal ideals. They do not believe in so many liberal ideals, so not so many wishful thinking. They are very pragmatic, neoliberalism. They consider national interests are more important than so-called morality or some universal ideals like democracies, like human rights. In fact, this is so-called a system maintenance theory. What is system maintenance theory? Liberalism, or later I will, in the next section, I will introduce you Marxism. This kind of theories, they aspire to rapidly change the whole situation. They are revolutionary theories, like liberalism, as I mentioned 2 lectures ago. This theory would like to use democracy, trade, and international organizations to prevent the outbreak of war. War in the past was a common feature in global politics. This school of thought, it desired to end war so as to totally change the whole international structure, totally change the status quo, 营造. However, this theory would just, neoliberalism just would like to maintain the status quo, would like to say, make the international system run more systematically, run more smoothly. Neoliberalism don't want to change, don't aspire for any change, or not, they aspire for some change, but not that rapid change, not a revolutionary change. This school of thought, a slight difference between this school of thought and realism is that realism doesn't trust human nature. They think that international relations is a projection of the human nature of human. No, liberalism think that human has a chance to progress. human, if they can apply the human reasoning, apply the human reasoning rationally, then there will be a culminative progress in human affairs. That means humans have a chance to progress, have a chance to live a better life. They trust human reasoning. They think that this school of thought think that in order for human to have a better life, there is a necessary to increase the interaction and information exchange between different actors in the international system. And then institutional arrangements is very important. International arrangements are very important to facilitate a better interaction between humans and better information exchange. This school of thought, as I mentioned earlier, this school of thought have a greater faith in human beings than realism. This school of thought have a greater faith in the chance of promoting peace, freedom, prosperity, and justice on a global scale. Better faith, a little bit more better faith than realism. However, this school of thought still thought that it is hard to strive for so-called stable peace because of anarchical structure. This school of thought and realism, both of them believe in one basic assumption, that is in international relations. That is, they think that the structure of international relations is anarchical in structure, is an anarchical structure, and this is the basis for international conflicts. So, why this school of thought emerged? It's because in 1970s, state-to-state trading become more frequent, and there's a so-called increasing interdependence of state. The reason for the increasing interdependence of state is because of the development of more technological and industrial advances. Think about Hong Kong. Before 1960s, Hong Kong was very poor. After 1960s, Hong Kong had been increasingly richer. Why? The very reason is because Hong Kong in the beginning received some built up its own industry by exporting some industrial products. Then a lot of enterprises, a lot of workers make a lot of money. So Hong Kong became richer and richer. The time is 1960s. 1960 is so-called the beginning of the first, not the first phase, but one very important phase of globalization. This is a result of the advancement of modern technology. In the past, before 1970s, no one traveled by, or not no one, but only very rich travel to other places by plane. If you are not that rich, if you're middle class children, you would like to study abroad, at that time you have to travel by ships before 1970s. But after 1970s, you have the chance to travel by plane to other places. So, if you travel by ship from Hong Kong to America, it takes nearly 1 week, more than 1 week. But if you travel by plane from Hong Kong to America, just 18 hours, or less than 18 hours, in fact, less than 18 hours. So the advancement of modern technology increased trade between different state nations, and because of their economic increase in the economic interaction, so they become more dependent on each other. Say today, because a lot of American firms like Apple moved to China, So now China face the coronavirus, that is so Wuhan SARS, and then a lot of Apple factories in China will close. So even Apple is an American country, is an American enterprise. However, lots of its firms, or lots of its factories, are in China. So if all those factories in China are closed, then Apple cannot produce new iPhones for sale. Then it's very significantly affects, of course, Apple's revenue generation ability. And then because the revenue of Apple decline, so it's in turn affects American economy. So it's like the trade relations between different states will lead to the so-called increasing interdependence of states. And there are two masters of this school of thought. One is called Cohen, he's Cohen, and the other is Nye. I do not show the picture of Nye here because Joseph Nye is a very, very influential international relations scholar in the late 20th century and the early 21st century. He introduced one concept which is more important than this one, called soft power. But this one is also important. It's called complex interdependence. That's a state to say the relations become more complex because of the increase of international trade. So the world become more pluralistic. Different players join the international interaction. So and the different states become more dependent on each other. This led to a new situation. That's led new theory to deal with the international cooperation. Worldists cannot tackle the issue. I will talk about it later. The forming characteristics of neoliberalism. The first one is increasing linkage among state and non-state actors. As I mentioned earlier when I introduced an example, Apple, its revenue is very important to America. So American government pay attention to Apple, to the development of Apples and then the running condition of Apples. And the China government, because Apple, these firms hire lots of Chinese to work in this factory. So Chinese government strongly interacts with Apples. On the one hand, encourage Apples to invest more in China. And then on the other hand, Apple also lead to enter the Chinese market. So the relations between Apple, this company, with Chinese government has a lot of interaction between them. New agenda in international relations. For realists, it only deals with security issues, that is war between states. This is a so-called high politics issue. The international relations, we have two concepts called no politics and high politics. No politics are those who are more down-to-earth issues, like economics, like trade, like nowadays to prevent the spread of diseases. There's low politics, more grassroots, more down-to-earth. High politics is issues that dealt by some diplomats, or there are some issues that should be done by some, say, military men. So they're high politics because they are not that grassroots, or they are not down to earth. There are some diplomatic issues like the North Korean missile crisis, or say to suppress the ISIS, involving military issues. And there are multiple channels for interaction. In the past, in the early 20th century, interaction between states is usually just state-to-state interaction between officials from two governments, because except some officers like the leaders of a state or some diplomats of the states, other non-ordinary people, they have no chance or very few chance to meet the officials from another state. But nowadays there are multiple channels for interactions, just like Chinese senior government officers receive the CEO of Apple, this company, and then like American is leader receive Joshua Wong. Multiple channels of interaction, not only limited in the past only let's say to stay official to official interaction, but nowadays many non-official interactions undergoing international relations. And also the fourth issue is the kind of the efficacy of military force. In the past, foreign affairs is mainly backed by your military capacities. That's a one statement. 弱國無外交. Weak state does not have to deal with its own foreign affairs. Why? Because weak state, because of weak military capacities, other strong state with strong military capacities can force this weak state to do whatever the strong power would like it to do. The weak power has no say because of its weak military force. However, nowadays, it is hard for one state to use military force to force another state to do whatever they like. For instance, like China or and U.S. Sino-China trade war. U.S. does not send any so-called aircraft carriers to China, and U.S. does not shoot any missiles to China in order to force China to sign the trade deal. No. Many issues does not involve military force, and also U.S. is very strong. Canada is comparatively weak. However, U.S. if there's some trade disputes like earlier, there's a trade dispute between U.S. and Canada regarding the issue of the amounts of tariff, 關稅 tariff. Then Americans still cannot use military force to force Canada to accept its own suggestion. So military force is not as important as before. And then realism has made a big inaccuracy in description of contemporary IR. For realists, they think that if there's an emergence of hegemony, then this will bring instability and war. However, neoliberalism has another thought, and this I don't know. However, the prediction of realism is contradictory to what's happened after the Second World War. Because of U.S. U.S. is a hegemony after the Second World War. However, because of the efforts of U.S., the world become even more peaceful and more stable than before. Why? Because American, in view of the Great Depression, rise of fascism in Europe, and then later, it resulted in the global war. I do not mention it again because I talked about this in the last two lectures. So American, because of these problems, they would like to create a system to stabilize world affairs. That is UN system. UN, I will talk about UN a few weeks later. However, you have to bear in mind that UN is not simply one institution. There are not of UN's institutions. UN is a system. UN, United Nations, and United Nations Security Council is just one of the system. WHO. World Health Organization is one institution inside the UN system. UN system is a whole system which aim at promoting cooperation between states. In fact, this UN system is backed by US economic resources. There's a lot of institutions like IMF, IBRD. I'll talk about this later, about what is Bretton Woods system. But nowadays, do remember that all these institutions, most of them, half of their funding come from America. Say nowadays, Donald Trump would like to cut the funding for WHO, because you know that WHO, there are some the CEO of WHO is suspected to be pro-Chinese and make a lot of decisions unjustifiably pro-Chinese. So Donald Trump disliked him. Then he decided to cut the funding of US for WHO. Then, because the majority, nearly half of the funding of WHO come from America, so WHO now face a very serious financial crisis because of lack of funding from America. In fact, these systems, why they are so-called hegemonic stability theory, is because US is a hegemony. However, US, through its efforts, like first one, financial contribution to UN systems, to all organizations under UN system, and secondly, of course, US is a world police. It sends military force to maintain peace in different parts of the world. So because of the efforts of this hegemony, then the world become more stable and more peaceful than before. So this is called hegemonic stability theory. Hegemonic stability theory. 霸權穩定理論. And international relations scholars predict that even after the decline of U.S. power, then this system will still continue because they will continue to cooperate with each other. It's because with these institutions, then state can cooperate more smoothly, and then each other can have more chance to access to each other's market. This school of thought, the same as realism, they think that state is the key actors, and state are very rational, instrumental actors. They think that state do things rationally. What is do things rationally? That is to maximize its own interests. However, for neoliberalism, unlike realism, they think that state, when cooperating with each other, their target is to maximize absolute gains. That is, for instance, like China and America both joined WHO. Even though maybe China, its economy can go a lot faster than United States after joining WTO, World Trade Organization. But if according to realists, then U.S. will prevent China from joining WTO because American will lose relatively. However, according to liberalism, U.S. still allow China to join the WHO. Why? So WTO. Why? The main reason is because in neoliberalism, they think that they should seek to maximize absolute gain. Absolute gain, that means they want to win. They want to strive for a win-win situation. So even though someone will gain more, this does not. This is not an obstacle for state-to-state cooperation. Then what is the greatest obstacle is free rider. That is non-compliance and cheating. This school of thought advocates the use of multilateralism 多边主义. What is multilateralism? Make it simple is that use of regional and global regimes or regional and global institution. Regime 係叫國際規定。國際規定 international regimes and global regimes is different from international and global organizations. I'll talk about it later, but nowadays make it simple. International regime and regional regimes is the same as international organizations. But in fact, I'll talk about it later. That's a difference. Then, what is multilateralism? Multilateralism is 多边主義. That's just a lot of countries join the decision making of world affairs. Say to deal with the global warming, this issue. American does not make a decision on how to deal with this issue itself. It leads a compromise solution, which agreed by different states on the world. At least most important, those kind of great powers, like including of course US itself, China, Russia, Germany, Britain, so on and so forth, France. This institution focus on areas that all states on the world have mutual interests, and problem of cooperation is the main issue of concern. That is, all states would like to gain from joining these global institutions. They want a win-win situation. But however, how to strike for a win-win situation, it needs cooperation. Cooperation is a problem. So states join this multilateral organization in order to solve the problem of cooperation. Then, the problem is cooperation. Why state is hard to cooperate? The main reason is because of the lack of information. You don't know whether another state will cheat. We resort to cheating. Is there any free riders? So international organizations think that global institutions, global organization, its main job is to avoid cheating, avoid free riders by, in economically speaking, reducing the so-called transaction costs between different states or information costs between different states. So international organizations, national leaders and policymakers meet very frequently, and they learn others' preferences and discover how to cooperate. By exchanging information, they know each other's intention, so they know whether you have a intention to cheat. If you have an intention, then how to prevent you cheating. This is the function of international organizations. And also because there's a dispute resolution mechanism, say China and US, they have trade disputes. Then they go to WHO, well, WTO, World Trade Organization, to settle the disputes. Then, because there's monitoring system and also dispute resolution system, it can prevent states from cheating and can enable them to cooperate. Okay, at the end, this is a shorter lectures. I just spent a little bit more than 30 minutes to finish this lectures. Do remember that neoliberalism and neoliberalism, rather than two enemies, they are not two enemies. Rather than two enemies, they are not two enemies. Liberalism and neoliberalism, they're two brothers. They both of them agree that international system is anarchic. So, because of this basic assumption, both of them think that a wise statement should deal with international issues very wisely and prudently. However, liberalism think that cooperation is difficult because states would like to strive for absolute gains. However, neoliberalists think that international cooperation is comparatively easier because neoliberalists think that states would like to strike for absolute gains, while neoliberalists think that state-to-state cooperation is very difficult because states strike for relative gains. In fact, nowadays international relations, we do not consider neoliberalism and neoliberalism. They are two antagonistic schools. They are not enemy to each other. They complementary with each other. There's division of work between these two schools of thought. Mostly, neoliberalism is nowadays deal with security and survival issues, preoccupied with security and survival, like war and conflict, like the North Korea missile crisis, or say the ISIS. Then neoliberalists concerned with economic welfare. That is like the trade deal between the trade conflict between U.S. and America. U.S. and China. U.S. and China. Why? Because neoliberalism is concerned about areas that state-to-state cooperation is hard to execute. Neoliberalism is concerned in areas that state its main concern is about the relative gain. That is military or security area. However, neoliberalists, they concern about areas in which state to state can cooperate more smoothly, and then at the end can be win-win, like trade. Trade can promote win-win, and I think you know that from taking the course called global political economy. Neoliberalists think that it is very important to pay emphasis on state's capacity. That is, one who is stronger can force others to do whatever a state wants. How? Because the main reason is because neoliberalists focus on military and security issues. However, neoliberalism, they focus on intention and preference. They focus on areas in which state-to-state cooperation is likely. So a state intention is more important in order to prevent the problem of cheating. Neoliberalists think that international organizations are very important and international regimes are very important. However, neoliberalists don't think that it's very important. They think that neoliberalists think that international organizations are subordinate to states. Okay, I will go back to this chart. After I introduce all important school of international relations to you, maybe a few weeks later. Okay, then see you next time.